The old woman, Mama Nkechi, as I would later learn to call her, lit the small, fat candle. The flame sputtered to life, casting long, dancing shadows that made the small hut feel like the center of the world. She did not speak. She simply knelt, her old knees cracking softly, and dipped her fingers into the bowl of clear water. She sprinkled the water over me, and where the droplets touched my rough skin, I felt a strange, cooling tingle. It was not the feeling of being washed for a meal. It was the feeling of being cleansed for a rebirth. Then she began to chant. Her voice was low and gravelly, and she spoke in an ancient dialect I did not understand, but the words themselves felt alive. They were not just sounds, they were power. They vibrated in the air, in the floor, and deep within my starchy prison. The symbols she had drawn in chalk on the floor began to emit a soft, pale glow. The air in the hut grew thick and heavy, like the moments before a thunderstorm. Inside my YAM body, a war began. A deep, agonizing pulling started in my very core. It felt like two giant hands had taken hold of my spirit. One hand was my uncle's curse, dark, heavy, and cold. It pulled me down, reminding me that I was a root, a thing of the earth, meant to be buried and forgotten. The other hand was Mama Nkechi's chant, warm, bright, and insistent. It pulled me up, reminding me of the sun, of running through the fields, of my own name. The pain was immense. I felt as if I were being torn in two. On the mat, my heavy body began to tremble. A low humming sound filled the room, coming from the chalk lines, the candle, and from me. The candle flame, which had been steady, suddenly stretched tall and thin, flickering wildly as if a great wind was blowing through the sealed hut. Mama Nkechi's chant grew louder, more urgent. Her face was covered in sweat, and her eyes were tightly shut in concentration. "The bond is strong," she gasped, her voice straining. "The curse was sealed with blood right and bitter envy. It clings to you like a stubborn vine." She saw that her power alone was not enough. The curse was fighting back with all the strength of my uncle's greed. She opened her eyes and looked directly at me. Her gaze was piercing, a physical force that pinned me in place. "Listen to me, child, inside the shell," she commanded, her voice cutting through the magical chaos. "My power can open the door, but your spirit must walk through it. You must remember. The curse wants you to forget. You must fight it. Remember who you are." Remember. The word echoed in the silent chambers of my mind. My uncle's curse was a blanket of darkness, making me feel like I had always been this way, a slow, helpless thing. It wanted me to accept that I was a YAM, but Mama Nkechi's words were a spark. I fought to remember. At first, all I could recall was the fear, the bitter water, the shrinking of my limbs, the darkness of the sack. "No!" Mama Nkechi's voice was sharp. "Not the pain. Remember the life. Remember the love that planted you. Your father, child. Remember your father." My father. The thought of him was like the sun breaking through the clouds. A memory flooded my mind, so clear and powerful it pushed back against the darkness. I saw him on the farm, his back strong as he dug into the rich red earth. I could smell the soil. And then I could hear him. He was singing. It was the song he always sang to the new yams, a song about the strength of the earth, the kindness of the rain, and the promise of a sweet harvest. His voice was deep and full of love. I am not just a YAM, I thought, the realization hitting me with the force of a lightning strike. I am Adanna. I am my father's daughter. I am a child of this land, not a prisoner of it. I focused all of my being on that song. I sang it inside my mind, my silent voice joining my father's. As I did, something inside me shifted. A crack appeared in the darkness. Light, warm and golden, poured through it. On the mat, my YAM body gave a violent shudder, and a tiny crack appeared on my rough skin. A thin sliver of brilliant golden light shone out from it. Mama Nkechi saw it, and her chanting intensified, her voice now filled with triumph. Yes, child, sing, call your spirit home. Another crack appeared, and then another. Light poured from my body, illuminating the entire hut. The pain was changing. It was no longer a tearing pain, but the pain of something breaking free. It was the pain of a chick breaking out of an egg, of a seed sprouting through hard ground. I felt my skin splitting, not like a vegetable being cut, but like a shell being shed. I felt the strange, horrifying, and wonderful sensation of my limbs stretching, of my bones reforming. My senses, which had been dull and distant, came rushing back in a dizzying flood. I could smell the herbs, the smoke, the magic. I could feel the soft mat beneath me. I could hear Mama Nkechi's triumphant chant. The YAM was breaking apart, dissolving into soil and light around me. My true form was emerging from the wreckage, a shape made of blinding light and unbearable pain. The transformation was not gentle. It was a violent, beautiful explosion. I was on the threshold, halfway between a root and a girl, a creature of both worlds. The energy in the room peaked. The chalk lines flared into a brilliant white fire, and the candle flame shot up to the ceiling before extinguishing, plunging the hut into absolute darkness. The last thing I heard before my mind gave way was Mama Nkechi's exhausted whisper, "It is done." I awoke to the feeling of a soft, coarse blanket against my skin. The air was cool and still. The smells of magic and smoke had faded, replaced by the simple, clean scent of morning dew. I slowly opened my eyes. I was lying on the mat in Mama Nkechi's hut, and the morning sun was streaming through the small window. I lifted a hand to shield my eyes, and my breath caught in my throat. It was my hand, my own hand, with 5 slender fingers and smooth brown skin. I sat up, pulling the blanket around me. I looked down at my legs, my feet. I was whole. I was me. I was Adanna. Tears of relief streamed down my face, hot and real. Mama Nkechi was sitting on her stool, watching me. She looked tired, older than she had the night before, but her eyes were kind. She held out a calabash of water. "Drink, child," she said softly. "You have been on a long journey." I drank deeply, the cool water feeling like life itself. "Thank you," I whispered, my voice hoarse from disuse. "You saved me." "The earth's magic saved you," she corrected gently. "You remembered its song. But our work is not over. A weed that is cut down will grow back if the root is not pulled out. Your uncle still has your land, and he will not stop until he has sold it. His wickedness must be brought into the light for all to see." Fear tried to creep back into my heart, but I pushed it away. I was no longer a helpless tuber. I had survived. "What can I do?" I asked, my voice growing stronger. Mama Nkechi reached into a small pouch at her waist and pulled out a single tiny seed. It was smooth and black like a polished stone. "True justice does not come from screaming and fighting," she said, placing the seed in my palm. "Go to the village square when the sun is highest. Your uncle will be there, with the man from the city, trying to complete his evil bargain. Do not be afraid. Walk to the center, tell your story, and plant this seed in the earth. Then sing your father's song." Clothed in a simple dress she gave me, I walked back to my village. The journey felt different now. I was not being carried. I was walking on my own 2 feet. I felt the strength of the ground beneath me. When I reached the village, I saw that Mama Nkechi was right. A crowd had gathered in the square, near the big Iroko tree where the elders sat. My Uncle Uche was there, smiling his oily smile, standing next to the man with the shiny face from the city. A piece of paper was in the city man's hand.
I took a deep breath and walked into the center of the crowd. A gasp went through the people. They stared at me as if I were a ghost. My uncle's face went through 100 changes in a single second. Shock, confusion, fear, and finally pure venomous rage. "Adanna," one of the elders exclaimed, "your uncle told us you ran away to the city with a wicked heart." "He is lying," I said, my voice clear and steady, ringing through the silent square. I looked directly at my uncle. He did not send me away. He tried to bury me. "She is mad! The girl is sick in the head!" Uche shouted, his eyes darting around nervously. "She is trying to stop me from selling this useless land to provide for her." I did not argue with him. I knelt down in the center of the square, just as Mama and Ketchy had told me. I pushed my fingers into the soft earth and planted the small black seed. The crowd murmured, confused. My uncle laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. "See, she is playing in the dirt like a baby. She is crazy." I ignored him. I closed my eyes and thought of my father. I thought of his love for the land, his kindness, and the legacy he had left me. And then I began to sing. I sang the song of the sweet harvest. My voice, at first quiet, grew stronger with every note. It carried across the square, the same ancient melody my father had taught me. As I sang, a miracle happened. The ground where I had planted the seed began to tremble. A tiny green shoot pushed its way out of the earth. But it didn't stop there. It grew, visible to every eye, twisting and climbing into the air at an impossible speed. The vine was thick and strong, and it did not grow randomly. It wove itself into a shape, the shape of a man on his knees, his head bowed in shame, the shape of my uncle. The crowd cried out in shock and fear. The vine sculpture was a perfect likeness of Uche. Then the living vine shot out from the sculpture and wrapped itself around my real uncle's ankles, holding him fast. He screamed and tried to pull away, but the vine held him like an iron chain. Trapped by the magic of the earth itself, his lies fell away. "It's true," he shrieked, his face a mask of terror. "I did it. I cursed her. I turned her into a yam. I just wanted the land." His confession hung in the stunned silence. The city man, his face pale with horror, dropped the paper and ran to his car, speeding away from the village and its powerful magic. The elders looked at Uche, trapped by the vine of his own guilt, and their faces were like stone. Justice had come. He was banished from the village that very day, a man who had been judged by the earth itself. 1 year later, the rains were gentle and the sun was kind. Our farm was more beautiful than ever. The yams we harvested were the biggest and sweetest anyone had ever seen. I was no longer just Adanna, the orphan girl. I was Adanna, the guardian of my father's land, a girl who knew the earth's song. Mama and Ketchy now lived with me, her quiet wisdom a constant comfort. As I stood in the field, singing to the new shoots pushing up from the rich soil, I knew that my harvest was not just of yams. It was a harvest of strength, of justice, and of a future that was mine to grow.